Good morning. It's the NBA strategy show for March 4th on this Saturday. Join alongside with me is Ship My Money. Adam, how are you doing this morning?
Doing pretty well. One more show until the weekend, so looking forward to that. But 5 game slate to talk about should be a good time.
Yeah, it's another Saturday in the NBA. It's March. I'm kind of hoping these teams don't pull these shenanigans like they were early in the season, as these teams are trying to fight for positioning in their standings. Saturdays in the NBA, it seems like the variance, especially who's resting, who's playing, is kind of through the roof. But it's the NBA another day. How was your Friday night?
Relaxing. I didn't really do anything. Stayed in, watched Shameless, which I'm watching for the first time and enjoying. Yeah, so didn't do anything, which is nice because now I feel good this morning as opposed to how I feel on most Saturday morning shows.
Yeah, I actually sat down and watched all of the Denver and Memphis game. It's one of the first full games I got to sat down and watch, one versus two in the West, and then John Moran proceeded to flash a gun on Instagram Live this morning as he's off the rail. It seems like so. Who knows what's up with John Morant nowadays? But here we are to talk about a five-game NBA slate. And the first game, shout out to our presenting sponsor, Price Picks. Like and subscribe while you're at it. We got Detroit as 15.5 point underdogs going to Cleveland with a 219.5 total. And whenever Detroit's on the slate, you're always interested in targeting the opposition. But on this Detroit side of things, they're missing guys early in the week. We've seen James Wiseman enter the starting lineup more consistently, but they're kind of led by like Jaden Ivey, Killian Hayes, James Wiseman. I believe Bojan Bogdanovic is out for tonight, and that's going to open up a bunch of usage for this team, some extra minutes to float for Detroit, taking on Cleveland on the other side of things. So I do think Detroit's going to be one of the highly owned players to roster tonight. I think guys like Diallo is going to carry some ownership, even Hayes and Ivy. How are you going to target Detroit taking on Cleveland tonight?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really shitty matchup, but there is a lot of opportunity available for Detroit. Not only is Bojan Bogdanovic out, but Alec Burks out as well. So Burks is one of those guys that normally would step up and take on a bigger role without Bogdanovic. That last game that Bogdanovic and Stewart missed, you saw Alec Burks move into the starting lineup. I don't know who's going to start now. Do they finally go to Amadou Diallo, who they typically have really preferred to bring off the bench? Do they go some other route? You know, you can start Marvin Bagley, I guess. I mean, I wouldn't, but it's the Pistons. They can, I guess. So I think there's a decent chance you get Bagley starting alongside Wiseman against, um, a relatively big Cleveland front court. You also could get Amadou Diallo in the starting lineup. But regardless, you're just going to end up with a situation where, again, it's a really, really, really bad matchup, both in terms of there being a lot of blowout risk and also just, a very good defensive team in Cleveland. But there's going to be a lot of opportunities available as well. No Bojan Bogdanovic in terms of usage. Obviously, Cade Cunningham's out also. That makes Killian Hayes look better. It makes Jaden Ivey look better. If you're going to get possibly Diallo in the starting lineup, that's more minutes for him. And one way or the other, he should play plenty of minutes tonight. Marvin Bagley, maybe plays minutes alongside Wiseman. I wouldn't necessarily expect too many of them unless he starts, in which case clearly they're doing it. But 4,500 for Diallo, 5,200, and Bagley now has power forward eligibility as well. James Wiseman only has center eligibility, but he's 4,900. These guys look pretty good at cheap price tags given the amount of playing time and usage that's available with no Bogdanovic.
For sure, and it's I think whoever's going to start, you're going to have a little bit more confidence, and even if Diallo comes off the bench, I'm willing to take some chances on him. But
I
some
do want to
other
walk
guys, I
back.
think.
Sorry,
Okay.
I forgot to add Isaiah Livers back. That's my guess at who starts, and he sucks from a fantasy standpoint. But
Yeah, Livers is someone who I tend not to target in my lineups. Whenever he does start, he's going to carry some ownership. I will steer clear of that. But would you be willing to take some chances on some other sub 4K players? Your Rodney Magruder, RJ Hampton. Any interest? I mean, depending on, I rule out Corey Joseph, but specifically Hampton or Magruder, just because of there's no Burks and Bogdanovich. Are you willing to take some chances on one of those two guys?
large field tournaments, I think you could roll the dice on Corey Joseph, on RJ Hampton. Magruder probably starts. He's 3,100. Not a very good point per minute guy. These guys would all be incredibly risky, but they do all project. We have them right now between like 15 and 17 DraftKings points. We have Corey Joseph leading the way. So you are talking about, 5x projections. And if you just kind of get lucky on 3-point variance or defensive stat variance, there is a path for these guys to get there. It is only a 5 game slate. you do get, somebody like RJ Hampton, probably. We talk, people in chat always want to like play some end of the bench guy in these games with 15-point spreads. Where if you're thinking in terms of those lines, you're more interested in guys like RJ Hampton, where in a normal game environment, they could still get there. But then if this game does blow out, you're probably just getting like an entire fourth quarter of RJ Hampton. So you have like multiple paths to get there. So there's nothing that I like from these cheap guys, but 5-game slate, 150 max tournament, you could certainly get to them.
Yeah. And a quick question for you, Adam. Is my audio sounding okay to you?
You sound fine to me.
All right. Oh, interesting. Chat, we'll try to get that squared away. Please do bear with us. Apologies if you guys are facing some audio technical difficulties there. We'll try to get that squared away. Producer Jacob, I think, is seeing what's going on with that. So our apologies for that. We'll try to get that squared away. Oh, onto the Cleveland side we go.
Damn, Hannah's just coming for you.
Sorry?
I said, damn, Hannah is just coming for you. You asked your audio coach. She said, no, your audio sucks.
Damn, Hannah. It's a free show. Shit. Chill. It's 9 a.m. Just chill out a little bit. We'll figure this out. For all the thousands of shows we've got without audio technical difficulties, we'll be just fine. Just bear with us. But onto the Cleveland side we go, taking on a Detroit team. Certainly some of these guys can certainly pop off. Looking at their big four in Mitchell, Garland, and Mobley, and Allen, I have interest in getting to all four of those guys in tournaments because I think one of them can certainly spike in upside. I like the savings on Jared Allen quite a bit at 6,900. Nice price tag there. Evan Mobley, 7,600, has been playing better of late. This team's priced much better on DraftKings than they are on FanDuel, especially Donovan Mitchell, who's up at 10K. You can certainly take some chances on Mitchell against Detroit, but at that price tag, I'd steer clear. Darius Garland at 7,600 on FanDuel looks like a nice. Garland's priced at 9K over there. And I read that wrong. But this Cleveland team taking on Detroit, certainly one of those four guys can certainly pop off in tournaments. You can pick your poison type of situation here. There's a lot of merit in getting above the field there. But everyone else, not really interested. Maybe you want to take a chance on sub 4K Karis LeVert. Minutes are just not there. Maybe he gets a little bit of the extra blowout run if this game were to blow out. But it's a Cleveland team taking Detroit. How do you feel about Cleveland tonight?
Yeah, I think, you nailed it. Those four, it's sort of just mixing and matching those guys into lineups. They all look pretty good. I do think it's going to be easier to get to the front court guys, Jared Allen and Evan Mobley, than the backcourt, just because Mitchell and Garland are priced up a little bit more. Still certainly a good spot for them. They are getting a little bit less ownership than Allen and Mobley as well. But the $6,900 price tag for Allen looks very good. Evan Mobley, power forward eligible at 7,600. No issues there. And then, again, clearly, if you get to Mitchell and Garland, that's fine as well. As far as the other pieces, Karis LeVert coming off of a game where he did play 33 and a half minutes. Don't think that's the norm, but he is $3,900. There is a path to success for him. So I don't mind, taking shots on that. If you're playing large field tournaments and you want to hope that Ricky Rubio plays more than the 7.5 minutes he plays last game, be my guest. But I wouldn't be overly confident in going to him. But Allen, Mobley, I think, are the two you get to first, followed by Mitchell and Garland.
Yeah, and it's a tournament team to take a look on. Any final thoughts on this game before we move on?
It's just a brutal game. Like, there's so much that you're going to want from a DFS standpoint, and this game should just be an absolute massacre.
Yeah, and for those of you guys who haven't checked out PrizePicks, our presenting sponsor, I highly recommend it to you. If you haven't heard of PrizePicks or seen these PrizePicks slips just like flooding all over social, it's a great platform to take some chances on player prop betting. I certainly think player prop betting can be easier than DFS on some nights, and especially in this matchup. Our team has skewed up a specific Donovan Mitchell under. That's with his assists. Right now, the prop line's at 5. We have him projected at 4.28 with an expected win percentage of 69%. So I would definitely like starting my PrizePicks cards with the Donovan Mitchell under tonight. And check out our exciting offer that we have in the link in the description with PrizePicks, where you can get 1 month of Stokastic Plus when you make your first deposit on PrizePicks. So support our sponsors, support us, hit that like and subscribe button. On to the next game we go. Another game. Still a lot of tanking implications. Houston taking on San Antonio. It's kind of the Wembanyama Bowl, if you want to make a case for here. Houston's going to be led by Şengün, Jalen Green, and Kevin Porter Jr. They kind of have their all full hands on deck. Ty Washington, I believe, is questionable, and Jason Tate has already been ruled out. This team taking on a San Antonio spot, I certainly think you can definitely find some great tournament options here. And I think I'm going to be excited to go to Jalen Green at 6,200. He can certainly find a way to chuck his way there. 7,200 on FanDuel, a little different story. Şengün's minutes have been all over the place. I know he played some bad defense for Salas last weekend, and the minutes kind of trickled back up, but it's a San Antonio spot where I certainly think on this slate, I know there's Embiid later on in the night and Giannis, but if you want to take a center spot with Şengün, I wouldn't fault you here. How should we go upon the Rockets taking on the Spurs?
Yeah, I mean, it's a fit. This is just another like peak DFS. Like nobody ever should want to watch the Rockets and Spurs except for people playing DFS, who this is probably going to be like their favorite game to watch because you have two teams that play fast, don't play defense. Plenty of reasonably priced players. I'm with you on Jalen Green at 6,200. Obviously with Kevin Porter Jr. back, that cuts into Green a little bit, but he's still a very high upside guy. Last game, you got him up to about 29 minutes, lost 3.5 to garbage time. So seems like he's pretty much off that minutes restriction. I would expect that he's playing, at least low 30s here. Makes him look very good at 6,200. He's pulling 28% ownership. Tari Eason, 4,300, small forward and power forward eligibility. We've been seeing him get more minutes alongside Jabari Smith now that Eric Gordon is gone. So you can just be a little bit more comfortable expecting at least 20 to 22 minutes from him. And then there's paths to him getting more, whether it's blowout, whether it's just him playing well. There's a lot of, foul trouble to Jabari Smith. There's a lot of ways Tari Eason can walk into more minutes now that they are willing to play him alongside Jabari Smith and a center. So at a cheap $4,300 price tag, he looks like a good value. Jabari Smith at 5,500 is pretty cheap. He only played 21 minutes last game, but typically you can expect him, to be around 28, 30 minutes, somewhere in there. Good matchup. I'm with you on Şengün. The playing time has been really sporadic, but a lot of it's just been, Houston's involved in a lot of blowouts. You had some games where Şengün was in foul trouble. You had a couple games ago against, I think it was Portland, where Şengün was playing really well, but then didn't play in the fourth quarter. And I think people were like speculating that they didn't bring him back because like they're tanking or something. But if you were following the game, Houston was just getting absolutely destroyed. And then their second unit went on a run, like end of the third quarter, beginning of the fourth. They just stuck with what was bringing them back into the game. So it was just a game flow thing where Şengün didn't come back. Last game against Memphis, you got 31.5 minutes and he lost 3.5 to garbage time. So I'm reading that to mean like it's not a systematic thing that Şengün's minutes have been sporadic recently. If he avoids foul trouble, if this game's competitive, I think you're still getting, low to mid 30s in minutes from Şengün in a fantastic spot. So he's going to look good. KJ Martin's fine at 5,800. The only guy that I'm kind of hesitant about would be Kevin Porter Jr. at 7,400. And he's even sort of interesting because if he goes out there and plays 30 to 32 minutes, I like him too. It's just they had said he was going to be limited last game, but he still played 26 minutes, lost 3.5 to garbage time. I think that, at 5% ownership, there is still some upside there just because there's volatility in those minutes. If he goes out there and plays 32, I would be interested in him as well.
Yeah, this Houston versus San Antonio team up and down is great tournament options, and we'll see how the news progresses and how ownership evolves throughout the day. But certainly a team that I'll be targeting in my lineups in heavily fashion. But one thing I did want to mention to everyone who's watching, for those who haven't played F1 DFS, I recommend it because we are running a 50% off your first week of F1. Right now, if you go to the site, you'll see a banner saying you'll get 50% off with the promo code, I believe, SCORE, if I'm not mistaken. You can see that right on the banner. Get 50% off your first week of F1. There's 50K up to first tomorrow on DraftKings, and it's a fun little way to spend your Sunday morning. I recommend it, and I'll be certainly playing some F1 lineups tomorrow as well. But onto the San Antonio Spurs side we go here. The Spurs are been very tricky this week as they got the return of Trey Jones and then Devin Vassell. But all of a sudden, Devin Vassell has already been ruled out, and I believe Trey Jones should be good to go. Came off the bench last time. Devontae Graham got the start and was played some limited minutes. We'll see if that continues tonight against this Houston team. So keep in mind of a potential starting lineup change compared to last game with the Spurs. But on the Spurs side of things, as they'll still be without Devin Vassell, and Malachi Branham, I believe, is questionable. So we'll see what that looks like leading up to the starting lineups here. But if Devontae Graham starts, I certainly think you can play him at $4,500 on DraftKings where he gets a 3-point bonus. Certainly, I think Trey Jones's minutes could certainly go up. So depending on if there's any pregame news or news and notes from Popovich, I think you can certainly take some chances with Devontae Graham. But Jeremy Sohan has played better of late as the season has progressed at 5,400 in a Houston spot. I certainly like taking some chances here. And I don't think Zach Collins is out of the picture either at 6,400. And another guy who's been kind of just like getting like some ownership, not significant ownership of late, has been Charles Bassey coming off the bench. He grades out as a great like point per minute guy whenever he does get the court, but is he going to play enough minutes in a Houston spot to be determined here? Break down the San Antonio Spurs side of things. Do you have a preference here, and how do you envision the Trey Jones, Devonta Graham backcourt situation to play out as they don't have Devin Vassell today and Keldon Johnson?
Yeah, this is a really tricky team to talk about right now because Branham's questionable, but also Romeo Langford's questionable. He's been out for a while, so he would be another body they potentially have, but they're pretty shorthanded. Obviously, Keldon Johnson doubtful, Devin Vassell out, like you said. Also, no Doug McDermott. So that's somebody that typically soaks up some minutes. We don't know if Trey Jones is going to move back into the starting lineup or continue coming off the bench. They limited him to 21 minutes last game, so I don't know what they'll do with that. But Devonta Graham, played 32 minutes last game. There's a lot of paths to him being in the starting lineup. He's 4,500. So even if he's coming off the bench, I think he's a decent, high upside play just because the minutes should be there. But if he's starting again, which right now I guess we have him projected to, he's projected for 36% ownership, 30% chance of being optimal. He would just look good. There's a lot of usage available, a lot of playmaking available, and the minutes should be there. So really favorable price tag in a good spot on Devonta Graham. Jeremy Sohan at 5,400 coming off of a massive game is going to look good. He's played 262 minutes this year without either one of Keldon Johnson or Devin Vassell on the floor. Just shy of a fantasy point per minute, 22.8% usage rate, 12% rebounding percentage, 13.5% assist percentage. He's actually been very productive across the board. Makes him look extremely good. We actually have him going a little bit under-owned on DraftKings at 24% with a 30% chance of being optimal. The center position is going to look appealing, whether you're going to a $6,400 Zach Collins, who, if he avoids foul trouble, you're hoping plays 28 to 30 minutes, or going to his backup in Charles Bassey, who's 3,900, a good point per minute guy, and should play every minute, essentially, that Zach Collins is not on the floor. Either of them are good. I wouldn't play them together, but individually, they're both good. If Malachi Branham is playing at 4,700, he looks fine. 24 minutes last game, missed out on 4.5 minutes down the stretch. You're potentially looking at 28 to 30 minutes from him. If Trey Jones comes off the bench, I'm not really interested. But if he starts at 5K, he looks absolutely fantastic, because if he starts, I would assume he's playing 26 to 28 minutes. He's nearly 1.1 DraftKings points per minute without Johnson and Vassell. So he potentially looks good. Blake Wesley's 3,300, depending how news breaks. He could, walk into some more minutes. Played 17 last game, but with McDermott already out, if you were to get like Branham and Langford out, those minutes are available for Blake Wesley. There's going to be a lot to like from this team. It's just not entirely clear who it is yet.
Thanks so much for YouTube chat being patient with us as we've got the audio fix. So shout out to producer Jacob behind the scenes taking care of that. We apologize. And with that, I think everyone should hit that like button and subscribe button, especially Hannah Banana, who came after me, came after the colored guy in the stream today. So I can't, no, I'm disappointed in Hannah Banana. But outside of that, this Houston San Antonio team is going to be matchup is going to be a good way to target any DFS. We've touched on some concentrated ownership in the first couple of games. So here we go. We move on to Miami and Philadelphia on the side of this match. Atlanta and Miami. Atlanta takes on Miami as both teams are in a back-to-back. Miami lost on a Julius Randle Hail Mary shot last game, and we got a double bang from Mike Breen, which is pretty exciting. But the Atlanta side of things, they've been coached by Quinn Snyder of late, and with Quinn Snyder, it's been a kind of a different rotation the first couple of games. Have been interesting to see how that plays out. I think Josh Lloyd of the Locked On Network had a good indication of how Quinn Snyder had handled Derek Favors and Rudy Gobert in Utah. And he had a feeling that it might happen with John Collins and Clint Capella. We'll see if that transpires as the season progresses. I'm not so sure if that's going to be the same case, but something to keep an eye on here. But this Atlanta Hawks team, we saw DeJounte Murray put up a 50 fantasy point performance game last game. He's priced at 7,800. I think he'll certainly carry some recency bias ownership. Trae Young is 9,500. We know the three-point upset he brings to us on DraftKings. Price at 9,700 on FanDuel looks pretty strong here. Capella comes in at a solid 6,100. We'd love him to find a way to play low 30s minutes consistently. Sadiq Bey has been playing backup around here. Not really someone I'm excited to go to. It's going to be really DeJounte Murray, Trae Young, and Capella. Can't really advocate for anyone else in significant fashion. And Collins comes in at a very cheap 4,500. I just don't know what the minutes look like night in and night out. How do you feel about this Atlanta team on the back end of a back-to-back going into Miami?
Not nearly as good as I did about the Houston-San Antonio game. Clearly, if you're getting to Trae Young and DeJounte Murray, you're not doing anything wrong. They're perfectly good plays. Murray coming in around 10% with an 11% chance of being optimal. Young, 12% ownership, 12% chance of being optimal. Just pretty much correctly owned backcourt. Reasonable prices. Nothing stands out as glaring in terms of them being underpriced, overpriced. They're just where they should be. So perfectly fine getting to them. Clint Capella at 6,100 certainly gives you upside, but we did get in Quinn Snyder's second game as coach, we only got 25 minutes from Capella yesterday. He lost about 2 to garbage time. So I had talked yesterday on the strategy show about Capella playing 35 minutes in Quinn Snyder's first game. Then on the deeper dive, I pointed out that I realized Okongwu had been in massive foul trouble in that first game. So I wasn't really buying into those minutes. Last game, we saw an actual rotation, and it looked very similar to Atlanta's previous rotations where Capella plays around 27, 28 minutes. Okongwu plays 20 to 21. So if that's going to be the case, Capella is going to just continue to be a kind of just like middle of the road tournament play where he's still a good point per minute guy, and he's going to randomly probably play north of 30 minutes at times. And so he does give you a ceiling, but he's also pretty much correctly priced at 6,100. That price tag did come up about 10% from yesterday. DeAndre Hunter, John Collins, they're both cheap, but neither one is a particularly good fantasy producer, which is weird to say about John Collins, but he has sort of fallen off the face of the earth this season. He played 23 minutes last game. He played 26 the game before. So, if you want to roll the dice on either of them as lineup filler at low ownership, that's fine, but it's not anything I'd be prioritizing. This team is certainly a lot less appealing than some of the other teams we've talked about.
Yeah, it's kind of that appealing of a tournament spot. We touched on much better plays at similar price points earlier on. Onto the Miami side we go. Before we go on to Miami, make sure everyone's been checking out the new exciting live show that we have called The Odd Shop to take care of all your betting needs happening on the Odd Shopper YouTube channel. If you haven't checked that out, make sure to do so. You'll see a lot of the similar personalities that you see on the Stokastic channel, kind of like rejuvenizing your betting game like we did with DFS. So highly recommend it. Check out The Odd Shop where you'll see a bunch of the similar same faces over there. On the Miami side we go. Turn it back into the back-to-back. We'll see what Spoelstra does on who plays / who rests. This team needs to win games. So I'm more in the inclination that we might see Jimmy Butler play on a back-to-back, but who knows?
Hang on, we didn't talk about Philly.
Oh, sorry. I completely... Atlanta takes on Miami, and then Philly takes on Milwaukee.
Oh, I clicked the wrong team. Sorry, my bad.
Yeah. So on to the breaking down the Miami side of things here. Kevin Love has come in and just dropped Bam Adebayo's rebound rate a decent amount and kind of affected his fantasy upside along with that, in my opinion. But Bam Adebayo comes in at 8K and 8,300 in an Atlanta spot. I like taking some chances here. I definitely think that rebound rate can fluctuate depending on Kevin Love's minutes. Jimmy Butler comes in at $8,900. Seems priced appropriately / too expensive here. But my favorite Heat player to go to is probably Tyler Hero at only $7,200 on DraftKings. Kind of a different story at $7,800 on FanDuel, but I like getting the Hero here. But that's really about it. I don't have any interest going to Kevin Love. I think he's priced appropriate for his new role here at $5,200. How do you feel about the Miami Heat kind of big three in Butler, Hero, and Adebayo? Do you have a preference in targeting one or the other? As this team continues to remain without Kyle Lowry. So there's some backcourt minutes available, but it's been Hero soaking up a lot of that.
Yeah, I think they all look reasonably good. Good matchup against Atlanta. Pretty much correctly priced across the board. Hero's the one that I probably get to first, just because I think Butler's the most correctly priced out of the three. Hero and Bam probably a little bit underpriced at $7,200 for Hero and $8K for Bam, but Hero has the more favorable positional flexibility, point guard, shooting guard. Played 39 minutes yesterday. He's playing a ton. The upside's there for him, so he'd probably be the first one I get to. Bam played 38 minutes yesterday. You know that barring foul trouble and blowout, he's playing mid-30s typically. So no problems getting to him at 8K either. Butler, I think the most difficult to get to since he's only small forward and he is 8,900. But, certainly still does give you upside. The biggest issue with Butler is that they've kind of just been capping his minutes around 32, 33 minutes recently. Whereas, you can get those 37, 38, 39-minute games from Hero and Bam. So it makes them just look a little bit more appealing.
Definitely. And it's just a team that I think had decent tournament upside, but they're going to be pretty low owned. So definitely pick and choose your spots with this Miami team. Outside of that, any final thoughts on this game? It's going to be low owned, but I think there could certainly be a guy that you might need in this one to come up on top here.
It's pretty much those three. With you as far as, Kevin Love, Gabe Vincent, not overly appealing to me.
Agreed. And we're moving along here on this five-game slate. Not much yet to talk about. I'm sure that will develop throughout the afternoon as we get some more news. And also, if you guys haven't checked out the NBA lineup generator, that's something a lot of people are having success with. Check that out. It's been something. It's a fun little new tool for you guys to enhance your lineup building experience. I recommend it, and hopefully you guys have some success along the way. So check out the new NBA lineup generator. It's been around for about the last month, and there have been some successful returns from some people. On to the next game we go. An exciting game, potential conference finals preview between the 76ers going to Milwaukee. The Phillies 4.5-point underdogs driving to Milwaukee, who I believe has won 17 in a row, if I'm not mistaken. So they are on a crazy winning streak as they're inching closer to they're at a 16-game winning streak. I think they're getting closer to the 1 seed. If not, they've already gotten it. So it's something to keep an eye on with this Milwaukee team and this win streak here. But it's going to be a tough matchup against Philly on the other side.
They have it.
Sorry?
They're in first.
They are in first?
Yeah, they're a game up on Boston.
Oh, yeah, with the loss last night. Boston blew a 28-point lead. Did you see that?
Yeah, because I had a bunch of Jason Tatum and I had a good lineup that had both Tatum and Brown. And so and I had a lot of Robert Williams, which obviously failed. But I'm early on, I'm just like, oh shit, Brooklyn's not going to keep up. Like Tatum's going to fail because he's going to play 2.5 quarters. And then Brooklyn comes back and wins, and Tatum just ends up kind of sucking.
Yeah, Mikal Bridges, I need to apologize to him. I did not know his game.
I didn't know he had this in him.
No, he's dropped 40 plus in 2 games. So certainly something that I did not expect out of Mikal Bridges.
Like I expected there to be some big fantasy games just through like shot volume. I didn't think he had it in him to just like be a number one and be good at it.
Yeah, no, it's been really impressive. I don't know if this is for real. We'll see. And I think teams will adjust to him being like the 1A scorer on the team. But Spencer Dinwiddie can create a bucket on his own. So it's going to be an interesting team in the playoffs because I think their defense can win them a series. I don't know if they can win them 2 series, but I think their defense and the ability to shot create, I think could win them a series. So we'll see what happens with Brooklyn. But on the Philly side, we go here. It's Embiid and Harden on a slate together. And it's going to be those 2 guys, but it's a 5-game slate. And we saw Tyrese Maxey start last time against Dallas. We'll see if that continues and what Doc Rivers does, as we saw Melton go to the bench. So keep an eye on what Doc Rivers does with the starting lineup there. But I like getting to Embiid and it's sub $10,000 James Harden. Embiid is 11-7 over there in FanDuel where you only get 1 center spot. I certainly think there's enough value to get to him. I like going to Embiid. We know the upside he brings to the table, but I also don't mind also going to Harden. I think Harden at $9,700 is someone you can go to. You know he has triple-double upside. The minutes are going to be in the mid-30s, and as this game in Vegas expects it to be somewhat competitive. So I like getting to both Embiid and Harden. I like getting above the field. I have no issues playing them both. But the rest of the team is where it gets interesting. That being a Maxey and Tobias Harris. I think they're priced appropriately, but we know their ceiling's a bit limited, especially for Tobias Harris. Maxey can find a way to get there at 5,400. But talk to me about the rest of this Philly team and how should we go upon attacking Bucks team tonight?
Yeah, I mean, obviously any amount of Embiid you get to, you're going to feel good about. Disappointing last game, but was really good as far as scoring. He just didn't get as many assists as usual. He didn't get as many rebounds as usual. But this is likely to be a competitive game. Not a good matchup, but 11-2 for Embiid on a 5-game slate. Certainly going to be some appeal there. Harden at 9,700, still a very reasonable price tag for him. He should play big minutes tonight. He's playing 21% ownership, 18% chance of being optimal. If Maxey starts at 5,400, he looks like he offers some value. His per minute production takes a bit of a hit since he is playing a higher percentage of his minutes with Harden and Embiid on the floor, but you can project him for more minutes. He played 34.5 minutes as a starter last game. When he comes off the bench, you're expecting around 30. So it kind of it evens out, but makes him look still a little bit better as a starter. You can feel better about his minutes. So he looks like a pretty good value if he starts. Tobias Harris at 5,300, not exciting. It's a 5-game slate though, so you'll land there a little bit, but I think he's pretty clearly the 4th option or 5th option, depending how you feel about the Anthony Melton at 4K. The top 3 clearly Embiid, Maxey if he's starting, and Harden, and then you take a step back to Harris and Melton.
Yeah, and it's a team that I think I'll get to Embiid and Harden, but it's going to be a decision factor with how much Maxey and Harris I get to. Do you have a lean if Doc Rivers is going to start Maxey or not?
My guess is he does, but I have no idea.
Yeah. And let's say if Melton starts, do you think we could play him at 4K?
I mean, you can play him either way. I don't think it makes a huge difference. Like, I think he played 30 minutes off the bench last game. He closed over PJ Tucker. I think he's still just, whether he starts or comes off the bench, has an extremely wide range of outcomes.
Yeah, it's going to be very
because like either way, I expect Tyrese Maxey to be in the closing lineup. So it kind of comes down to does Melton close or does Tucker close, whether Melton's starting or coming off the bench.
Agreed. So we'll see how that plays out. But we know the ceilings the studs provide here for the Philly side of things. And on to Milwaukee we go. And it's the Giannis show at 12-3 and 11-6 as his wrist and knee seem good to go as he's been playing pretty well. They were without Chris Middleton last game, and it feels like the big 3 in Milwaukee haven't played like 5 games in a row together all season long. So it's been really back and forth with this team, but we have a decent amount of samples. They've played a lot of games together in the past, but it's Drew comes in at 8,700 on both sites. You know what Giannis is going to bring to the table, but no one really outside Giannis, I don't think, was going to get that much ownership. So it makes it a very interesting tournament spot where I might sprinkle in some Middleton, but those minutes are not consistently above 30 this season. And Holiday seems priced too expensive with all 3 of them in there. How do you feel about the big 3 in Milwaukee? And do you have any reason to take some chances on a Brolo or a Bobby Portis, any of these secondary wing players coming off the bench in this type of 5-game slate tonight?
I think it's pretty tough to get to much of anything outside of Giannis. Clearly, Giannis is good. 12-3, though, he is pretty much correctly priced, pulling 14% ownership. There's other pay-up options that are less expensive, like Embiid. But if you get to Giannis, great. He's the only guy that I really can see getting a lot of, though. Chris Middleton, assuming he's still coming off the bench and limited to 25, 26 minutes, he is playing pretty much every minute that Giannis isn't on the floor, which has led to very good per minute production from Middleton. But at 6,500, you're just at a price point where you can really only realistically do so much in 25, 26 minutes. It makes it tough to really want to get there unless this is the game that they move him back into the starting lineup. Drew Holiday at 8,700 that's not a price tag I want to pay with Giannis and Middleton in. Lopez is priced up. Portis is relatively expensive. I don't really see anything here outside of Giannis.
Yeah, barring any unforeseen news with this Milwaukee team, Giannis, and that's really about it. And should be enough value to get Giannis in your lineups and along with another stud tonight. But it's just kind of how Milwaukee's priced and kind of the nature of the slate. No one else is priced that great. I think there's a lot of better priced options around these Milwaukee players, that being your Drew Holiday, your Middleton, and Lopez, where I think there's much better, higher ceilings on those other players that we've touched on already. But everyone watching, hit that like and subscribe button. And kind of moving on to the last game, we'll circle back on the Detroit-Cleveland matchup. We'll break that down again just because of the audio difficulties. So that's why we're kind of zooming along here. We'll preview that yet again. But Minnesota coming off a big win against the Lakers. They're 5-point underdogs taking on Sacramento with a 228 total. Second highest on the slate, or third highest, but that can change leading up to tip-off. But on the Minnesota side of things, Anthony Edwards is 9-4. I like going to Anthony Edwards. Rudy Gobert looks like a solid option at 7,300 in a Sacramento spot. And those are 2 of my favorite guys to go to. Prefer going to Kyle Anderson over Mike Conley. Slow-mo comes in at 5,600. But this Minnesota team is priced really favorably, even on FanDuel. 8,900 for Ant. Rudy Gobert comes in at 7,900. So it's a Minnesota team I think I prefer quite a bit in tournaments. Getting to, you could sprinkle in some Jaden McDaniels. You're just counting on getting peripherals. There aren't a back end of the back-to-back. We know Gobert has had a kind of like a weird injury weeks with that groin. Leading up to the All-Star break, coming back from the All-Star break, just keep an eye on what happens with Gobert. All inclinations is my guess he's good to go. Jalen Noel did not play last game. We'll see if he returns today. That might affect the backcourt rotation minutes. He's at $3,200, but I love going to Anthony Edwards and Rudy Gobert. My sentiment, and I have a feeling that you might also.
What was the last thing you said?
I think you have quite a bit of interest in going to Anthony Rudy Gobert as well.
Kind of. So like Edwards, shooting guard, small forward, 9,400, really good matchup. I think he does look good. I'm a little concerned he's not running point as much with Mike Conley. He has a 15% assist percentage in the games he's played with Conley this year, compared to about 20% in the games he's played with Russell. 1.09 DraftKings points per minute with Conley, 1.19 with Russell this year. It is still, a small sample. You could see that change a bit. But I know one of the Minnesota beat writers last night was talking about it, seemingly being by design as well, that they've kind of scrapped Anthony Edwards running point as much now that they have Conley there. So that is something to keep an eye on, but still clearly a massive ceiling for him. He's got a 30% usage rate in these games he's played with Conley. So still a good matchup, still a very high ceiling. Gobert is another one that's really interesting because this is a good matchup. And, obviously assuming he plays, if he sits, just fire up Naz Reid. But assuming Gobert plays, this is a really good matchup. And he does see a bump in production playing with Mike Conley. I talked about it on yesterday's show, but going into yesterday's game, Gobert had a usage rate 2.5 points higher in the games he's played with Mike Conley than with D'Angelo Russell. And that's not surprising. We know that he has familiarity with Conley from Utah. We know the reports that D'Angelo Russell had no interest in working Rudy Gobert into their offense. So it makes sense that you're seeing an uptick in usage there. And for somebody like Rudy Gobert, 18.5% usage isn't a lot. And it doesn't, seem like a huge difference, but he's so efficient that is a big difference. You've seen an uptick around 1/10 of a fantasy point per minute from him in production. My concern is that his playing time hasn't been there. He played like 27.5 minutes yesterday. You've kind of just seen him around 30 minutes pretty frequently. And with this being the second leg of a back-to-back, I would expect him to just be around 29, 30 minutes again. And his price tag has gone up a bit. So you do get a very nice ceiling from him. I just wish that I felt a little bit better about his playing time. But either way, right now he is projected to go a bit under-owned. Only 7% ownership on DraftKings, 11% chance of being optimal. So I do like the ceiling he offers. I just wish we could count on more playing time. I like Kyle Anderson at 5,600. He sucked yesterday. I had a ton of him. He was awful. But he still played 35 minutes. He's still over a fantasy point per minute in the games he's played with Mike Conley so far. We know that, overall he's like a 0.95 fantasy point per minute guy. So I think he offers some value at 5,600. I don't mind taking some shots at Naz Reid at 4,400. He's playing all of the backup center minutes, as you would expect, but it goes hand in hand where, you were getting those 33, 34, 35-minute games from Gobert frequently. Now you're not getting them as often, which means you're getting more 18, 19, 20-minute games from Naz Reid. Low owned, power forward eligible, high upside, good matchup. I think that's a pretty interesting play, as long as the ownership stays down. And then obviously, again, if he's starting in place of Gobert, the ownership is going to skyrocket, but he just becomes the best play on the entire slate.
Yeah, and it's Sacramento's a spot where I like targeting this Minnesota team. I definitely like taking some chances here. How do you feel about specifically Mike Conley? I know you mentioned the repertoire he has with Gobert, but at 5,900, my concern with Conley is he's such a pro facilitator. He doesn't shoot the ball enough for me to get that upside. But on a 5-game slate, comes in at 5,900, I might take some more chances with Conley than I usually do. How do you specifically feel about Mike Conley?
I think he's a little more expensive than I would like. I'm on the same page as you. He is projected to go a little bit under-owned. So he's somebody where, within individual tournament lineups, maybe you say like, okay, I'm just going to go to Mike Conley here, hope that he puts together a big game against Sacramento, certainly very capable of it, but it's not somebody that I'm actively seeking out. I'd really prefer him if you were like 54, 5,500, not a huge difference, but I think that he's that 10% matters.
Agreed. Any final thoughts on Minnesota before we move on to Sacramento?
I didn't specifically mention Jaden McDaniels, but he also should play low 30s in minutes. He's 4,700. That's another reasonable value piece.
Agreed. Hit that like and subscribe button, everyone. And yet again, if you're joining us late, apologies for the audio difficulties we had earlier in the show. We'll touch on Detroit and Cleveland before we wrap up to make sure you guys have a clearer picture of that. On to Sacramento we go. They're on a back into the back-to-back. They won another thrilling game against the Clippers. And it's a team where Domantas Sabonis at $10,000 is going to be a low-end tournament option, I think. He's going to have some ownership for sure. But $10,000, we know the upside he can bring to the table. 9,500 on FanDuel, power forward center eligibility looks really solid over there. De'Aaron Fox is priced appropriately. He's been balling of late, 9,100. I think I might steer clear of that price tag, but he's shown the ability to pay that off here and there. Harrison Barnes is going to play the minutes. You're just really hoping for an outlier usage game from him at 4,800. And the situation with Monk, Herter, and Keegan Murray, it's kind of like roulette. It's kind of one game. One of those three guys I feel like has a game that can really carry a lineup, but it's very inconsistent. And it's a kind of a variant trio there. How do you feel about this Kings team taking on Minnesota as they're also on the back end of a back-to-back?
Yeah, so I mean, Sabonis should be a little bit easier to get to today than he was yesterday. $10,000 center only on DraftKings. I believe he has power forward eligibility he has power forward eligibility 9,500 on FanDuel, so certainly much easier to get to there. But even on DraftKings, pulling 18% ownership, 18% chance of being optimal, very different today because yesterday it was really tough to get to him when you had Anthony Davis like $100 more expensive playing without LeBron. Here you don't have that, and you have the shorter slate, so you don't have quite as much opportunity cost in the mid range at center either. Makes Sabonis look better. Very good fantasy producer, that goes without saying. Assuming he avoids foul trouble, you should be getting mid-30s in minutes from him. So I like Sabonis. Fox at 9,100, I think pretty much correctly priced. I think he's similar to Trae Young, where it's just like, you get there, you're going to be fine with it. It's a good matchup, but it's just, you're not looking at the price saying like, oh, De'Aaron Fox is underpriced. It's more like, okay, well, I've filled out my lineup and I have $9,100 left, so I'll play De'Aaron Fox and feel pretty good about it. Then you get to the, like you said, basically just roulette of Malik Monk, Keegan Murray, Kevin Herter. These guys are all cheap enough where they have upside, so you are getting some ownership coming in. But from a median standpoint, they're pretty much correctly priced. It's just that in any individual game, one of these guys certainly can step up. Keegan Murray would be the one that I want to go to first. Small forward, power forward at 4,500. Cheap price tag. He has been playing a lot recently. So I think he's the one I would get to first. I would probably go Kevin Herter second, Monk third out of the three, but I think Herter and Monk are very, very close. And then like you said with Harrison Barnes, you don't have to worry about the playing time as much. 4,800, you expect the minutes to be there. It's just, is the production going to be there? So he's similar to like Jaden McDaniels from the other side of this game, where he's cheap enough that you can kind of just plug him in as the last guy in. One other piece that I do think is worth mentioning, only 3.5% ownership coming into Trey Lyles. He's sort of the Naz Reid version of, the Kings version of Naz Reid from a fantasy standpoint, where he's probably playing 18 to 20 minutes, but he's just really cheap. He's not a bad point per minute guy. And at very low ownership, I do sort of like the upside that he offers you as a contrarian value piece.
That was definitely something to keep an eye on here. The Kings aren't a team to rest guys on the back end of a back-to-back. It feels like this season, but you never know at this point in the season. And man, they're the 3 seed. It's good. It's exciting times in Sacramento. They have not had a team with this much regular season success since, I want to say, Chris Webber on the team with Mike Bibby.
Stojakovic.
Yeah, that was a great team. Doug Christie was on that team.
Yeah, Christie.
Vlade Divac. I mean, that team was one of my favorite teams growing up, but they absolutely got hoed. Game 6 against the Lakers or Game 7 against the Lakers? So, but it's exciting times in Sacramento. Definitely good for them. We'll see what they can do in the playoffs. I don't know if they can win a series because they might have a tough matchup on the other end, but it's good to see a new team in the playoffs. But we're going to circle back to the first couple games and just quickly highlight the key players that we thought could stick out. And also, for those in Massachusetts, pre-registration is happening for BetMGM. You can find that in the description. And also, make sure to call 1-800-GAMBLER if you have any gambling issues. Make sure to take advantage of that pre-registration for those Massachusetts residents for BetMGM. But just going to circle back, Detroit taking on Cleveland here. Detroit, like we said, 15.5 dogs. They're missing Burks and Bojan Bogdanovic, so there should be minutes and usage to open up. We touched on guys. We know Ivy and Killian Hayes can certainly get there at those respective price tags at 5,700 and 5,300. But the rest of the team, that being Diallo, Bagley, or the other guys in the backcourt, just quickly summarize this Detroit team and how we should potentially target them in tournaments. I know we know the upside with Ivy and Hayes with no Bogdanovich, but the rest of the team, just highlight a quick breakdown of Detroit.
Yeah, a lot of minutes and usage available in a very, very, very unappealing matchup against Cleveland. But you have cheap options here. Killian Hayes is at a fantasy point per minute without Bogdanovich or Cunningham on the floor. Ivy's at 1.14. Diallo's at 1. You don't have Alec Burks today either, so that helps solidify minutes. I expect Isaiah Livers is going to start. I don't know for sure, but I assume that they're going to go Hayes, Ivy, Livers, Magruder, and Wiseman, in which case I'm not really interested in Magruder or Livers because they're not good point per minute guys. But you would have Amadou Diallo probably playing mid-20s off the bench at 4,500. If he starts, those minutes look even better. James Wiseman at 4,900, center only. We know the upside he gives you. You could certainly see some Wiseman alongside Bagley here. Bagley has power forward eligibility as well at 5,200. So it's a really risky team to go to just because of the matchup, but there is a lot of opportunity available. Diallo, Hayes, Ivy, Wiseman, Bagley, all pulling double-digit ownership, all look pretty good.
Awesome. We got a $10 super chat, I believe, from Donald Duck. Congratulations on that win last night, $10,000 in the 4-game slate on DraftKings. Really shouting out to you and Josh. So Donald Duck, $9.99 super chat. Appreciate you tuning in. More appreciative of that super chat and wish you all the continued success. And on the Cleveland side of things, they're taking on Detroit. I think they're kind of their big four here are all worth tournament options here at their respective price tags on DraftKings. I like getting to one of those guys if I was building one lineup potentially, but not necessarily. They're all have tournament upside in this Detroit spot. I might sprinkle in some Karis LeVert. Maybe he gets some high usage off the bench and maybe a first burn at the blowout run, but something to keep an eye on. Sub 4K for LeVert. Quick breakdown of Cleveland for you, Adam.
The main four are certainly appealing to get to here. I think I get to the front court first with Jared Allen and Evan Mobley. Their prices are just a little bit more favorable than Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland, but that's not to say you can't go to those two. They're both really good as well. Karis LeVert off the bench at 3,900. Certainly, you want a 5-game slate worth a dice roll.
Definitely. And apparently the audio became clear during the Atlanta and Miami game. So we'll touch on Houston and San Antonio here. Houston looks very appealing from top to bottom. You had an excellent breakdown of why Eason is playing more minutes. Jalen Green has the upside at 6,200 here. And Şengün, we know those minutes are been a little bit on the lower side of late, but certainly can go up against San Antonio. Comes in at 7,500. How about a quick 2 cents on Houston? I know they're very appealing in tournaments tonight.
Yeah, most appealing game on the slate just because of pace and lack of defense. Jalen Green at 6,200 looks good. Şengün at 7,500 looks good. Talked about not being overly concerned about his weird minutes lately. A lot of it can be explained by a combination of foul trouble, blowouts, or in the Portland game specifically, Houston's second unit catching fire at the end of the third, bringing them back into the game. Şengün just never subbed back in. But you saw 31.5 minutes, minus 3.5 minutes of garbage time last time out. If this game's competitive and Şengün avoids foul trouble, I do expect him out there for a lot of minutes. Makes him look really good. Tari Eason looks like a good value. He's been getting more minutes alongside Jabari Smith since they traded Eric Gordon. That means that you can just feel a little bit better about him being around 21 to 22 minutes as a baseline. And then there's a lot of ways he can step into more minutes, whether it's a blowout, whether it's him playing well, whether it's Jabari Smith in foul trouble. There's a lot of ways he can get more minutes, and we know he's a really good point per minute guy. Jabari Smith at 5,500 looks fine in his own right. KJ Martin looks okay at 5,800. Don't mind getting there. And Kevin Porter Jr. even is somewhat appealing because they said he was going to be limited last game. He played 27 minutes and lost about 3.5 to garbage time. If they're going to just let him go for 32 minutes, if this game's competitive, he certainly has a ceiling at low ownership against a terrible San Antonio team. On the other side for the Spurs, we are waiting on a lot of information. Keldon Johnson's questionable. Keldon Johnson's doubtful. Malachi Branham and Romeo Langford are questionable. We know Doug McDermott is already out. So there's going to be good plays here. It's just a matter of who. If Devontae Graham ends up coming off the bench, he's a solid play at 4,500. If he starts, he's one of the best values on the slate coming off of a game where he played 32 minutes. The center position looks good. I wouldn't play Bassey and Collins together, but you're getting a combined 48 minutes. So, if you get 30 minutes of Collins at 6,400, he's going to look good. If he were to get in foul trouble and Bassey gets to low 20s, he's going to look good at 3,900. Jeremy Sohan is up there with Devontae Graham as far as one of the just absolute top options from this team. He's about a fantasy point per minute guy without Vassell or Keldon Johnson on the floor. If Branham is in and starting, he's fine at 4,700. If Trey Jones comes off the bench, I'm not particularly interested, but if he starts, he would look great at 5K. So this is a team where we need more information, but there's definitely going to be a lot of plays that look good.
Yeah, it's a very appealing tournament game environment to target, and definitely think it will be the highest like overall cumulative game ownership that we have on the slate, barring any unforeseen news. Bunch of content tonight, but stay tuned for I think at 6:30 Eastern there will be live before lock with Greg and Neil breaking down this 5-game slate. Definitely keep an eye on that and stay tuned for that. And additionally, hit that like and subscribe button. And once again, we apologize for the audio issues we had, and we hope that quick breakdown that happened over the first 2 games helps you guys out. Give Adam a follow at ShipMyMoneyDFS. You can give me a follow at RinPack on Twitter. And thanks so much for tuning in. Any final thoughts, Adam?
Good luck. And don't forget, MMA starts at, I think, 5:30 Eastern.
Okay, yeah. I believe what's his name is returning, like gained a shit ton of weight to play in the heavyweight.
John Jones and Cyril Gane.
Yeah. No, it should be a fun MMA slate as well. Definitely take advantage of the tools that we have on the slate. And thanks so much for tuning in, and good luck tonight.